Remember that this is always recorded. We record these meetings. We share the presentation deck. It's okay if you cannot attend, but we are receptive to your request. We had a lot of people out of town last week, so that's why we pushed it back to this week, but still wanted to have this meeting before the July 4th holiday. So my first update for everyone this morning is our Georgia at Work Learning Governance. We received great response across multiple agencies of volunteers. This is a good problem to have, multiple volunteers from one agency. And of course, as previously presented, I believe in February, we showed the structure of our Learning Governance Committee. And so we don't have that many seats to take 6 people from one agency, right? But we love that. And I want to remind you all that as we prepare to send these communications out, these are going to be coming out on Monday and Tuesday of next week to notify you that you've been selected for our Learning Governance Committee. But as these come out, if you do not have that seat for your agency, there is someone who does, one, and this learning community is where we'll be discussing every item that will then go through that Learning Governance Committee. So I want to share that with you so that no one has a sense of discouragement. This is structured so that we can pass things through in the appropriate manner, and then it could go, if it needs to the full Georgia at Work Change Control Board, where I have that seat to represent us. So those will be going out, and then I will wait until after the 4th because a lot of people are going to be out of town that week. I don't want things to get lost when your email's piling up. So after the July 4th holiday, we will then send out our first meeting invite for that Learning Governance Committee. We are planning to have that meeting sometime mid-August. So you will be notified of our learning governance selections if you volunteered by Monday and Tuesday of next week. And then that first meeting invite will go out the week after the July 4th holiday. Okay, so just a quick update there. And thank you all for volunteering. It was really inspiring to see the amount of people that want to be involved and want to see this be as successful as it possibly can. Maddie, you can go to the next slide. So our next update, I'm going to pass it over to Al Howell to share a little bit about where we are and what we've done so far with our manager supervisor training program. Go ahead, Al.
Get off of mute there.
There you are. Yeah, always.
Thank you, Holly.
I do the same. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Holly. I want to give a very brief update to the group about the manager supervisor training. We had a meeting it was on Wednesday of this week. We met with a subgroup of this larger group that had volunteered to work with us to explore the possibility of how we can provide or deliver manager supervisor training on an enterprise basis. So we had our first kickoff meeting, and I had a very good group, and I have to say a very passionate group. We had a great conversation, a lot of feedback. And so some of the topics that were covered, I gave an overview of the HRA, the retention study that we did back in March of 2023. And in that study that was done with Deloitte Consulting, it had identified training for managers as being an issue, where we know that survey that we did back in March of 2023, we had about 13,000 employees respond, representing 62 agencies. And the need for manager supervisor training was identified in the survey as an issue that we should address. It also was a recommendation. Deloitte had 14 recommendations as a result of the survey, and the manager supervisor training was one of the 14 recommendations that were made. And so in the meeting, we kind of went over the results. I also gave an overview of our HRA statutory authority. A lot of the things that we do in HRA are mandated by legislation. Some of the things that we were required to do include maintaining a compensation classification plan, providing for a performance management system, providing for a common application that can be used by applicants, an applicant tracking system. We're required to provide that. The annual workforce report that we do, that's also required by legislation. The drug testing program that is offered for random testing and for pre-employment, that is a requirement through legislation. And then lastly, the flexible benefit program that we offer, that is another mandated service. Training used to be one of our mandated services, and some of you have been with state government for a while, like myself, can remember the days when we had actually a training facility that was located in the city of Decatur. And but in 2015, that the training requirement was removed from one of our responsibilities. So we're no longer in that position to be able to provide enterprise training. However, with the manager supervisor training, there are some ways that that's what we want to do with this group is explore ways that we can do this and do it within the context that we have to operate in. And so what we did, we asked the group several questions. One, we wanted to know, what are they currently doing? What is your entity? What do you have established as a manager supervisor program? We also asked from your program, what is transferable? What could possibly be transferred from your program maybe to another agency? And then we also talked a little bit about what are some of your issues that you have with providing supervisor manager training. What are some of the needs that you see that managers and supervisors need? And so from this discussion, we learned a lot about what is currently being done throughout the enterprise. And Department of Labor, they have a boot camp. That's a 6-month program for managers. They have a blended approach where some of the training is done online, some of it's done in person. They also have programs built around critical conversations for managers. And then they have a special program that's called Moving to Management that is geared for people that have are becoming a new manager or a supervisor. Driver Services had a program called Drive to Lead that was based upon an annual meeting. They had an annual meeting with all their managers and supervisors, and in that meeting, they would identify needs. And then what would you like for us to do this year in terms of helping you to become a more effective manager or supervisor? And then the Department of Public Health, they had a very impressive program that was done in person. It's a six week program, and it's geared toward emerging leaders. So that's just the tip of the iceberg about some of the things that were discussed in the meeting. But we left the meeting with next steps. And so what we are doing is we will schedule a meeting in July that will continue the conversation and then start talking about what are ways that we could deliver a manager supervisor training program under the conditions that we're in, where HRA can't directly provide that service, but maybe we know we can work together in terms of providing this critical training that is needed for managers and supervisors. So that's the next step, is that we are currently in the process of planning a follow-up meeting that will be in July. We'll continue the conversation about next steps in terms of how we can make this happen. So that's an update. And are there any questions? It was a very, very energetic meeting. Everyone was very talkative. And like I said, I just gave you a tip of the iceberg in terms of some of the things that are happening throughout the enterprise.
Thank you so much, Al. And I second that. It was inspiring to say the least. I think a couple of people had put in the chat, I'm leaving feeling inspired, but everyone's hands up. We had 6 hands up at the time, and people in this group were so proud of what they have established within their agency and their training programs and for their managers and emerging leaders. And it really was inspiring. You saw passions come up. You saw smiles on people's faces when they talked. It was a great meeting. And for those of you that attended and participated, thank you. We can't wait to bring more back to this group to share. All right. Thank you so much, Al. We appreciate the update. Maddie, you can go on to the next slide. With that, back to business as usual, right? Our Georgia at Work training. This has been a very big topic. A lot of this I want to preface before I hand it over to Ryan. We've seen so much people who just they want to get their hands on the training, right? We're anxious to see the new system, and all of that is stemmed because everyone wants to make sure that they are prepared for this transition, that they're taking care of their employees, that they're communicating the right information. And I think that's something that we can step back for a second and staying engaged. So I have asked Ryan, I ask him every month, hey, present to this group, and he is always happy to do so. And I'm leaving a spot every month in this meeting for anyone from the training team to present that communication out to you guys and those updates and allow time for questions because I know there are a lot of questions around end user training. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan to give you a Georgia at Work training update. Ryan?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. There's a lot of things going on in training, y'all. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and for the ones of you, and I believe it's all of you, that have been involved in training before, you know that when you can see the light, the end of the project, that it's crunch time, and it really ramps up for us. So let's go ahead and give you some of these updates here. We'll go to the next slide. Starting out with e-learning. So as I hope everybody knows, we did start our e-learning rollout on June 2nd, so at the beginning of this month. We knew that was going to have some hurdles, some obstacles to be able to overcome, and we rolled that one out first to kind of give us a little bit of heads up before we started to roll out really everything else. And so some of the obstacles I'll kind of key you in on, emails. And I really got this idea to start out from Holly that, hey, we need to make sure, have this initiative that everybody is working to get their agency's emails correct inside of Teamworks. And I want to put an asterisk on that. When your email is correct in Teamwork, it needs to be the primary email. As you know, there's a primary and a secondary email, and we came across various situations where the email was updated in the secondary, but not the primary slot. And that transfer over that Holly was talking about earlier, it wasn't happening because it was only pulling that primary email. And so people were not getting the updates that they needed for basic navigation training. Also, to touch on that, we received some contacts as well that people were not enrolled in the training, or they did not get the email for the training, but they had actually already taken it for a previous reason. So just to kind of put that information out there, if you have already taken it, if anybody has already taken it, or if they have even started the training, they will not get an additional email. So some people were calling in asking, hey, why didn't I get this training? Can you enroll me in the training? Can I get registered on the LMS? But they had already had that happen. So a little bit of learning curve on there. And we got a couple things we're going to do to be able to help that out as well going forward. For the instructor-led training registration reminder, we are going to pivot a little bit on this. I want to give this update to everyone. So most of you are probably familiar with either a learning path, learning program. Basically, they're the same thing. They're structured in the LMS so that you have your learnings listed out for your learners. We are going to also do that for instructor-led trainings now as well. So we're going to have those learning paths built inside of the LMS, and we are going to get the learners enrolled in these learning paths, and the learners are going to have to go into the LMS and they're going to have to select the classes that they want to take, just because we're going to offer multiple classes for instructor-led training, and we want them to be able to select based on what fits their schedule better. And so we're going to enroll them in the learning pathway for the instructor-led training, really all training. We're going to enroll them in that learning pathway, but they're still going to have to go in and still register for the particular class that they want to take, if that makes sense. So that'll give them guidance on a kind of a limit their path on what classes they can actually enroll in, so there won't be all this extra enrollment for the facilitators later to be able to comb through. So they'll have the classes that they need to enroll in, and they'll just be able to select which one and which date they want to. Touching on that, you can see our next bullet there, track training completion. So one of the members of the SAO team, one of our developers, has worked with Holly's team to be able to develop a job aid to be able to help individuals with direct reports. So managers with direct reports, really anybody with a direct report, to be able to go into the LMS and to be able to look up the completions of their direct reports. So that is something that is going to be posted onto the resource library next week. That resource library, I keep guiding people towards that because it's going to be a place that we're going to constantly put in information, schedules, learning programs, / pathways on there. There'll be templates for anybody to be able to use to filter down to their direct reports as well, and be able to filter down into the agencies. So I know I said a lot there. Before I move on to the next slide, I want to make sure I don't have any questions about anything I just said.
And we have a couple of comments in the chat. One said, Scott said, receive feedback from employees that they are not registered for the e-learning foundation. I'm assuming you're talking about the basic navigation course. So in a minute, I'm going to show a slide for how to access Intellum. So there is a link there if you have an individual employee and they're having trouble, where they can submit a ticket through that form. But also, if you want to email the Next Gen training inbox, and you can always copy me on any of this for awareness, and it'll just get to me quicker so that I'm aware, because it is 2 teams that are working together as one on this. And it's more than 2, really. It's multiple teams. We have our contact center, we have our LMS team, we have our training team. But it's a group effort to identify the problem. Like Ryan mentioned, we've had people that think someone's not enrolled, and then they've already taken it. Or there was an instance, and I'll go to this in a minute, where an employee left and came back, so they were marked inactive and they were locked out of the LMS. I'll speak to that in a moment. But those are good situations. That means that they were captured in the audience and enrolled in the training. So those are quick and easy fixes. If someone has been missed, that should be on the enrollment, and that should be a small number if there are any remaining, then we will certainly get them enrolled. It's a very easy process to do that, but we want to make sure that we're tracking it adequately to identify the issue. Why was someone missed? And then let's see, HRDs need the ability to see all agency completion and enrollment. So that's something we have been discussing. The report, how it works in the LMS, we run a large completion report. You have to build it if it's for a specific agency. That does take some time, but it is doable. But what we're thinking about is providing some type of report. It would take some time. So this wouldn't be like a weekly report. It would have to be spaced out a little bit, that we could provide out to the agency's HRDs, so that you can have eyes on that. And then in that in-between time, since this wouldn't be, it's just not realistic to have it as a weekly report, because we are looking at 80,000 employees. So these reports are quite large. But in the interim is why we have that manager access as well. So HRDs can communicate to their managers, hey, make sure you're using this job aid and you're going into Team Georgia Learning and checking on your team members that they are enrolled and they are completing their training. It is very simple. I know sometimes people are hesitant to put something else on their managers, or sometimes our HRDs. We know how heavy your plate is right now. So we're trying to create multiple options for you to be able to track this and have that sense of comfort and reassurance that your employees, your managers are where they need to be and receiving everything that they need to receive. So that's a great call out. And hopefully we will have something. I've got to work with the training team as well as our executive leadership to determine the sequence of making those reports available to HRDs. But we do hear that need, and so we're working to provide that out. Absolutely. Great, great comments. Drafted.
Really good comments.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Let's see. I think I see one more. I see something about the draft email template for managers on the slide. Where can we access that resource and when? So you can see Tony. Thank you so much, Tony. Tony actually created the job aid. Give her some credit real quick. Shine her out. On the resource library, you're gonna see that there is it's basically a manager portal, and you'll be able to see where all these templates are listed at for managers to be able to use and distribute out to their agencies. So if you go to that resource library, one of those sections there will have those templates listed out. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide there. All right, just to talk about learning programs and things surrounding that for a second. So again, learning programs, all they are is just a list or a path for learners to be able to take certain learnings based on their role. And so we're going to have those learning programs posted on the resource library that Tony put in the chat a little bit earlier here. We are going to change that up. It's a little bit cumbersome to be able to update the PowerPoint long version of this. So we've created we call it a one pager, but it's actually it's a front and back situation for the learning programs. It's a little bit more easy to look at, and it doesn't take as much to comb through. It's not 50 plus pages of learning programs. And so we're going to have that as a one pager posted. We just recently, that should actually go up today, should be going up today. So wanted to give everybody a little bit of heads up on that. Talked about the training support center, that first bullet over there. Foundational and role-based learning programs. Just to point that out again, foundational learning programs, though, that is what is being rolled out right now. Starting out with basic navigation, ESS, MSS, and there's also a learning one that's meant for the LMS for people to be able to know how to navigate that one. So, and then after that, you will have your role-based will specifically teach you how to use Georgia at Work to do your particular role. And so that's what that will be for. Course descriptions, those also will be listed with the learning programs. And these will be very, very helpful for individuals that will be using this for new hires. So I want to be able to give this out there, this information out there. We are building a form now for new hires that are being enrolled between the time of us getting our audience identification, which we're getting those in from all of our HRDs this week. Thank you so much for that, HRDs who are participating in that. And to the time that we have a blackout for the LMS, which will take place mid-September, specifically September 16th, we'll start that blackout. So we are putting together a new hire form that we're going to make available to everyone so that if they have a new hire in between that gap window, that they can still get them submitted for implementation training. But once that 16th hits, everybody's just going to have to wait until we go live, because the LMS literally is going through a transition from one to the next at that time. So there will be a little bit of basically a blackout at that time. All right, let's go to the next slide. I think there's one more. All right, so just to hit on these, and this is the last slide here, just to kind of hit these home. Auto enrollment, June 2nd, that started. If you have any situations with that, we do have processes in place for you to be able to use smart forms for our CSC teams. Those are up and running now, that we can start getting information out to you on how to get enrolled or troubleshoot some of those situations. Also, you can go to the NextGen email box. More e-learning enrollments, those are on the way. They will be coming out soon. Our goal is to have so that the information that people lose in between getting the e-learnings now and actually being able to do the job on October 1st, we're trying to push back some of those e-learnings so that they're closer to that rollout time. Instructor-led trainings, though, again, those registrations, we are going to put people in those learning paths, and they're going to have to go and register for the courses that they want to take on those specific dates. Training schedules and resources, those are going to the resource library. You already got a chance to see that link in the chat. If you have not, it'll be in there, so you'll be able to go back to things to share right here. Point employees to the training resource library and training support center. Those are going to have a lot of good information on there, and those are going to be the latest and greatest for anybody to be able to access. Managers get a job aid. We talked about that already, so please share that information out there so they can look at their direct reports. We are still working on an option that is feasible for everyone, that we can report to agencies for everybody that's listed. Share downloadable role-based learning programs. I'm going over to do watch for training enrollment emails. We did have a little bit, we have talked about this before, but a little bit, some people suspected was spam. On that training resource library, you're going to see a template where you can see what the email content is going to be, where it's going to be from. It's from the DOS. You're going to be able to see that content on the resource library so that you can know that email is not spam. Some people did mark it as spam. Review your role-based learning programs. Managers use the job aid to be able to check your direct reports and download and share the learning programs with your employees. So lots of information there. So much going on. I'll be in the chat. I can answer questions. I see Dr. Carter is already answering questions in there to be able to help out. So we'll be in there to be able to help out with any chat. Please reach out to me. I have people reach out to me almost every day. I jumped on a call with somebody yesterday to be able to help with some information. So we're busy, but we'll make time for you. We certainly will. All right. I think that's it. Holly.
And we're so grateful to your team. And I know Ryan mentioned it, nothing's perfect, but the fact that we have expanded a small agency's LMS to, push out end user training to 80,000 people, it's taken. I just want to say thank you to all of those, from SAO and DOAS that have been involved in that effort, our contact centers, and thank you all for, your willingness to provide feedback. That's the only way we're able to ensure that this runs as smooth as possible. I know Dr. Carter, thank you for answering that question about auto enrollment. And then Brandon, the sexual harassment trainings for fiscal year 26. So the supervisor version, the manager training, will still be available. We'll probably push that out within the next 2 weeks, beginning of July. We'll continue to push that out in Intellum, Team Georgia Learning, as we have before, because that is included in the data that we bring over into the new system. For the employee version, it will be available in Georgia at Work at Go Live October 1. However, to prevent a lot of back and forth between you having those completions and then having to convert them into the new system, what we are communicating out through HRA and through the program is that the employee version, only those new hired employees are taking that in order to stay in that policy compliance where you have to take that training within the first 30 days of hire. And then we will be sharing a template to report those completions so that we can then load those during our blackout period, those final 2 weeks of September. And that completion will then reflect in Georgia at Work, and that employee will not be reassigned that training. So we've got it established. We're testing that out again in our enterprise UAT. Go ahead, Brandon. I see you have a follow-up question.
Sure. Yeah. In our LMS, we normally download the SCORM package for the new training. We always start our annual training on July 1st. And so normally we download that new version and put it into our list of new hire courses, and that's how we track it. Are you still going to be putting a package up there, or is the employee training now going to go through DOA, through the new LMS as well?
So yes, we'll still provide it because you're going to have to administer it during that first quarter to any new hires to capture that 30-day requirement, right? But
Yes,
we're asking not to push it out to all employees, but
correct.
only to capture them to those new hires because it will be available to everyone October 1. But since
Oh,
we're going live in Q2, we've got to make sure that we're getting those new hires covered. And that way it's less for us to convert those enrollment completions from your system to ours so that it reflects. And we'll have a template. It's very simple. It'll have employee, like first name, last name, employee ID, course name, enrollment and completion date, I think. I mean, it's a very simple template, but all of the sexual harassment communications that come out, that's where you'll get that information, those instructions. That's where the template will be provided. And then what you send out between July 1 and September to any new hires, that's what you would report on. And then we will load it. It'll be reflected in that employee's transcript in Georgia at Work. And then moving forward, that employee version as well will be pushed out through Georgia at Work.
okay. So do you know when the FY26 SCORM is going to
I'll
be
follow
released?
up. Yeah, I'll follow up and let you know, Brandon. I'll make myself a note.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't want to, just wanted to ask real quick because we
It's a great
usually just put
question.
once it's available, but I just wanted to check since we're starting ours next week.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to follow up. Thank you so much, Holly.
No problem. Thank you, Brandon. That's a great question, and I almost included it on the agenda today. But we'll continue to make sure I work with that team with HRA for all the sexual harassment. But anytime, and that's the point. I'm again glad you asked that for another reason of this learning community. We are swamped with communications right now coming at us from every direction between NextGen and your normal job duties and all the legacy systems that we're leaving. It's really not just PeopleSoft that we're leaving. There's a lot of other things that are changing for us. So, that's why we're here. This community, we want to nurture that so we can help each other out through these times and promote, resource sharing and everything else. So I encourage everyone ask those questions because this is the group to help each other out so we can get through it. Thank you so much. All right, Maddie, if you'll go on to the next slide. So speaking of end user training, I know Ryan mentioned a lot of times some of the issues that we had, they're the issues we love to have, right? Because we had an easy answer for them. That's a good thing. One was simply some of the login issues. You'll see when you go to Team Georgia Learning to log in for the first time, it says at the top under Team Georgia Learning, under our state seal, your login is your employee ID number, and then your password is also your employee ID number. So the first time you log in, that's what you are using. Include that leading 0. That's very important. After that, you'll be prompted to reset your password. So here came problem number 1. That email that Ryan mentioned. People go to reset their password, and then they don't get an email. It's going to whatever email is marked as primary in TeamWorks. Also, let's say you do have an LMS account. Maybe you did this a long time ago. You don't remember your password, right? We're saying, hey, we've enrolled you in basic navigation. You received an enrollment notification on June 2nd, XYZ. Those enrollment notifications are coming from the email address that you see on the screen, notify@doas.exceedlms.com. Please share this with your team members. This is not spam. This is where any communication from the learning management system is coming from. And again, I made a little note on this slide. Check your primary email address in TeamWorks. I know that I had someone asked in the chat, is it okay if that is our personal email address? For us, from the learning management system, as long as you can access that email address, that's all that matters to us. It will function. Your HR departments may have a different, requirement of what they expect you to use, but as long as you can access it, that's what matters. Go ahead, Christine.
I just want to share that getting this email correct now is important for more than just the LMS. When we go into Georgia at Work, notices from Georgia at Work to the employee about other things like tasks that are waiting them in the system and such are also going to go to that email. When we were doing some of this troubleshooting, I noticed an employee who still had in there a dhr.state.ga.us. DHR hasn't been in existence for what, 17 years or something like that. So that is really this one point alone will help us in so many ways for your employees to succeed in the new system and in training if we can work through that now. And we've been trying to get that message out in as many ways as possible. But so any way you can help us get that news out, please share.
Thank you, Christine. And that is huge. So, we're focused on learning here in the LMS and in user training, but something like your information in Teamworks is vital for the entire conversion and the entire project. And I see that leads me into Allison's question. I do not have an answer for that in the chat. So during the blackout period, that is the blackout period defined for Intellum, Team Georgia Learning. So that's where my focus is, because I'm in charge of making sure that we convert all of that data into the new system. Well, what is going into the new system, and then the data that's not going into the new system, where we're retaining it, but making sure that that transition happens, no end user training is lost. So that is our Team Georgia Learning blackout period only that I refer to in this meeting. I don't have the material in front of me for the other blackout dates. I've seen them. We've talked about them in meetings. But what we'll do, Allison, and it might be your point of your POC with your agency that could share that information. But I'll come back and respond in the chat where would be the appropriate place to direct that question, because that's an excellent question. We want to make sure that everyone is prepared. And as we start this cutover process, wow, the amount that went into the cutover plan. There's communications that have been established that will be going out to prep your agencies as well as the appropriate people on any necessary actions that have to be taken prior to a blackout period of a legacy system, as well as how that works, so that you can answer questions as well for your employees that have the same concerns. So I'll make sure we get that right direction for you placed in the chat. Great questions. All right, Maddie, you can go to the next slide. You are so welcome, Allison. Thank you for bringing that up. So when you log into Team Georgia Learning, you will see this page. You will have different colors. Y'all see that orange, blue, yellow, green, purple. Some of you will see green, some of you will see blue, some of you will see red. That's just the branding within the LMS. That has to do with how we have, allocated our LMS costs over the years within DOAS. So you might be a student related to fleet or to surplus, to our divisions. So if you hadn't previously been a part of that, you'll probably see all red. That was the new color we put in there to associate it with our additional users for Georgia at Work. That is just for how we've built our LMS and how we had to extend it for end user training. So don't be alarmed if someone's screen sharing with you and you see red and they see blue and you're thinking I'm in the wrong place. You're not. The colors are irrelevant. It is for us. So I've put in a red box here around plan. Plan is where you will go to see any assigned trainings. Now, sometimes if you've completed a lot of things in the LMS before, it's in chronological order. So you need to scroll to the bottom to see where you've been enrolled in a new e-learning course, or as Ryan mentioned, those programs. You will see two words, program and path. In Georgia at Work, those groups of trainings are called programs. And so that was a really important to me, that as end user training was pushed out, I had sustainment in mind. We need to call them programs because that's the technical verbiage that they will be called and how you will search for them in Georgia at Work in the new LMS. In Team Georgia Learning, they are referred to as a path. So what you'll start seeing is we have HRD program, whatever it is, you'll see path in parentheses. So just a heads up on that terminology, but we're trying to include both of those words to make it clear for everyone. Now, if you look, I know it's really small in the top of this screenshot, you'll see beside Georgia Department of Administrative Services, DOAS, there's a few little icons. That first one is a little house. It's blue. That's because I'm on my home screen. If you go over to the third icon, it almost looks like a little flag or a waving brochure. That's also your plan. That's the icon for plan. When you hover over it, it says plan. But if we clicked on plan right here, that takes you to your assignments. And then if you think, did I take it? You can check your history to the right of that. Next slide, Maddie. Okay, so right here, I'm showing you history. If you didn't see, and we've seen this a lot, people have emailed me directly. They've submitted tickets. I mean, the number is easily in the hundreds of this scenario where people have gone to their plan and they don't see the Georgia at Work basic navigation training. And they say, I was never enrolled. I did not receive communication. Help me. What's going on? But they're not checking their history. They may have taken it back in September because they were a tester during our first 2 rounds of SIT. And they don't remember. That's totally fine. That's a good thing. So always double check your history. We have even had a case, and it is okay, where people took it a week prior and they'll email thinking that they haven't. That is okay too. We would rather check and help you. But that's why I wanted to include this here, because obviously if you don't have to submit a ticket, if you want some peace of mind, just knowing where to look within the LMS is always helpful. And then we ask you as our leaders, we have our learning and training directors in this call, our managers, our HRDs. This is something you can share when your team member calls you. I never did the training. All right, well, let's double check your history within Team Georgia Learning. That's a huge first step that you could do. So checking that history. Another thing that we have noticed during this is there have been some cases where someone maybe might be locked out of the LMS, right? A lot of those, and we've started tracking those as of last Friday, have been because someone left, whether they retired, left the agency, whatever the case may be. They've returned as a time limited position or a contractor position. Our integration from this LMS, from Team Georgia Learning that runs with TeamWorks, does not pull over those part-time records. So you will need, if you're locked out, to submit that ticket so we can reactivate that account in the LMS. Now, because we started seeing it, we were proactive and found about 3,400 scenarios here, 3,400 users of people that in the past 6 months have left and returned in some sort of time limited or contractor position, but have been identified as someone that needs to take basic navigation. So we have sent a request to reactivate those accounts, and that should solve a huge number of that, that issue that we have seen. Again, this is an easy, simple fix. All you have to do is submit a ticket and we can reactivate that account. So I was glad it was as easily identifiable as it was, but it takes the feedback from you all for us to know to do that. So I can't thank you enough for your patience and your willingness to provide that feedback. Because like Ryan said, we're rolling out basic navigation to all, and this has been our time to learn those lessons and make sure that we're providing the best support to you all as possible. Are there any questions around this platform, around end user training, around Team Georgia Learning? And if you think of something, please put it in the chat, reach out to me anytime. A lot of people too, they thought maybe an attached agency was left off of enrollments, and they weren't. And it's just complex when you're logging into so many systems, and that's a good thing. And if we left them off, we need to know that so we can add them. But so far, like some of our CSVs, they were enrolled. It was just a matter of maybe activating those accounts or knowing the proper place to look. Kyle, this was helpful. Apparently I was enrolled back in December and didn't know it was sitting in my house. Kyle, we've been doing so much. That's our favorite problem to have. So we love that. Anything related to Vector Title IX and FERPA transitioning into the LMS? I don't have an answer for that, Allison. Let me look into that and I'll get back to you. I don't have any knowledge of not related to the LMS. I can tell you that, but there could be something else. You're so welcome. All right, Maddie, will you jump to the next slide? And actually, I'm going to pause. Go to the poll, Maddie. Can you do that? And then we'll come back to this. Yes. So while we're on this topic, please, everyone, pull out your phone, scan the QR code, or the link should be clickable. This is the, I forget what you call it, but how Maddie's sharing her screen. She's also put it in the chat. But if you will go open this poll, and so we've heard from some of you, but even if you've shared your issues, even if they've been solved, please answer this poll. We would like to know if you experienced any difficulty accessing the Georgia at Work Basic Navigation e-learning module. So you have the yes and no option, and you have a blank other where you can it's free text, so you can provide that feedback. And make sure you include your name, first and last, your agency, and your email. I'm going to add this. We're tracking things, and we want to ensure we've captured all the use cases of some of the trouble that's been encountered, so we can make sure that these new learning programs or paths that are going to be pushed out run as successfully and smoothly as possible for your agencies and your employees. Yes, great question, Kyle. So it is possible to set up reminders, and I believe we have those set up in the system, but I can't think off the top of my head what they are. And if Tiffany would know off the top of her head, she's out of office today. So I believe we have 3 reminders set up, 2 that go out prior and 1 that goes out if you've missed your deadline or your due date for that enrollment. And what we have done is if you miss, or if an employee misses the due date of that enrollment, the manager is copied. The manager of that employee is copied on that enrollment late completion notice that comes from the LMS. So that is set up, but let me, when we get off this meeting, I'll look at what that duration is so I can put it in the chat of when those notices go out, because I want to give you the proper time frame. But I think there's 3 total, 2 that go out prior and 1 that goes out if you've missed. And then that 1 that's missed also goes to that employee's manager. And that's something I'm glad you asked as well, because if you're copied on that late completion notice, if you're a manager, so I'm a manager, and let's say Chris did not do his training and I'm copied on that. When you get the email, you have to open up the attachment to see that it's for Chris. I wouldn't see that it's for Chris unless I opened up where it's attached. So it's not a direct copy like you would see if I just copied you on a normal email. So that's something good too, where I could show y'all in our next meeting what that looks like. I'll have one, we'll send a test one to my email and I can provide screenshots or share my screen. Unfortunately, no. That's a good question. Could the training department also be notified of late completions? We wouldn't be able to add anyone to those the way if you will, the soup org. I'm always afraid to use that word because it triggers a lot of people that have been involved in that initiative for Georgia at Work. But the way it is set up currently in the LMS has already been built, and that we are reliant on the vendor to help us set that up. But that is something potentially, how we talked about earlier, sending those reports, the completion report to the HRDs, that they could share that with their training departments or their training directors. And then there's a completion or enrollment status column on that report, and you could filter by in progress, complete, or I need to see if that completion column has late or if we needed to potentially add a column for that to that report. So I'll get back with you on that, on some options to make it easier for your HRDs to, share that report with their training departments. Great question. Thank you, Kyle. Oh, great. Okay. Love that. So I'll explore that this next week with my LMS admin and see if we can get that added to that report. All right, can I get a thumbs up from everyone, or a heart, or any kind of reaction that you have completed the survey? Awesome. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Maddie. Maddie, if you want to go to the previous slide. And if you haven't done the survey, Maddie did share the link in the chat, so please complete that for us.
Yes, just a few things about upcoming webinars that are happening through Biz Library. I did provide all of July and August's webinars, because we'll mention this in a second, but we're not going to have an August meeting. we won't have a July meeting. We'll pick back up in August. But the upcoming webinars we have are, there's one this the first week of July, so next week, HR Solo Superhero, Driving Impact Now, Leading Tomorrow. And then Are Your Managers Coddling Employees? That's happening at the end of July. And then there will be 2 happening in August. Top 20 Skills for Career and Business Success, and then Compliance Confidence, a Practical Guide. Again, these are all, I'll go back to this one. At the top, you can have the link. These are all free to attend, and you get credits if you attend them. So definitely check those out. They're definitely beneficial to join and learn everything that you can. And then, yeah, this is our final slide. We have the newsletter going out next week. Holly will also be sending that email that she mentioned for learning governance next week. And then our next meeting will be on August 22nd. So taking a little break in July, but we'll pick back up in August.
Thank you, Maddie. And please don't hesitate to reach out. I know we're not going to have a July meeting. And the biggest reason for that is because we are in not only the end user training rollout, and so a lot of us are also trainers for that. So I'll be involved in that initiative. We're also in the middle of our enterprise UAT. So we'll be doing a lot of testing, as well as continuing all of our builds and data conversion. So July is very, very busy, and I wanted to ensure that we still had time, for our first, to prepare for our first learning governance meeting coming in early mid-August, and everything else that's going on. But please don't think that the next time you can ask these questions is at August 22nd meeting. If you think of something, please reach out. We do want to keep track of things. So we do ask, if there's an issue, you're submitting those tickets, or that you're including the next gen training inbox on those communications. But you can always copy myself, copy Ryan, or reach out to us to say, hey, I sent this email to the training inbox. We're happy to take it a step further to help expedite that process. We are getting such a large volume of questions through those different next gen inboxes. The team that monitors those are phenomenal. They will get back to you, but we're training 80,000 people. This project is massive. So if there's anything that we can do to provide that extra support to expedite a response, let us know, reach out to us. That's why we're here. That's the whole purpose of this learning community, so that we can help each other out. And then I saw Allison had another question in the chat. The HRDs viewing the organization as a whole to ensure all who should be enrolled actually are. So that's our intent with the report we will provide for completions. And in that, you will also see any who are enrolled. So if someone was left off of that, you could, of course, report to us on that if someone was left off. But I think recently there was some communications that went out to HRDs to review assignments of training based on security roles. So this goes past the employee self-service and the basic navigation and the learning overview. This goes to those role specific. Those should have gone out to HRDs. And I believe today was the deadline for response on those. I know Melanie Marks and Bo McDaniel took the lead on that for the HCM side. So if you have a follow-up question, just shoot me an email and I'll put you in touch with the appropriate person. But we are trying to take every every measure and every effort. Thanks, Dr. Carter. End of day today, those are due back. But we want to make sure that the right people who need to know how to use something on day one of Go Live are captured in that training audience. Now, I do want to remind you, there might be someone that you think needs the training, but they don't need it for that day one role. That is not their primary job responsibility on October 1 to utilize that system. And you'll see that in the training assignments. All the training, there is going to be, a sustainment plan in place that we're taking this training into Georgia at Work. And as new people come on over the next couple years, that training will be updated to account for, the new Workday releases that come twice a year, any system changes, new hires being trained how to use things. So, currently we don't have that for every, role and job in PeopleSoft. So this is a really good opportunity for us to, improve our training when it comes to sustainment of that and seeing it in the new enterprise-wide system. Thank you, Dr. Carter. All right, we're in the final 2 minutes. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or anything else you would like to share with this group? Okay. Well, happy Friday, everyone. I hope you found this helpful. Again, if you did not complete that survey, please do so. We cannot know all the ins and outs without your participation and feedback. Also, Craig, thank you. Don't forget about the GCHR conference. The early bird special has been extended, I think, through 6:30. You can register today to get on that discounted rate. I know there's going to be some wonderful speakers there, so please make sure that you get signed up for that. It's a great conference. All right. Thank you all. Wonderful to see you. Reach out anytime, and we will see you at the next meeting in August.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Christine. Bye, everyone.
Be safe.
Bye.